Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a new occasional series, How I First Discovered Various Composers. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this because, how we get into things and where we find them is a very, I think, helpful topic for a lot of newcomers, particularly who are looking to figure out what the entree is and where you get them. And most of the time, I think, we find things by hearing them on the radio or word of mouth. But today, media is very different. There's streaming, there's other stuff going on. And we encounter music everywhere in our lives. And every so often you hear something and it just blows your mind. And you go, ooh, wow. And you'd never heard of it. Well, the one I want to talk about today is JANÁČek, because we just did If I Could Choose Only One Work By, and we did JANÁČek. And he's such a unique, fascinating character. And back in the day, he wasn't very well known at all. He's one of those composers whose reputation literally has been made over the past 3 decades, maybe, largely through the efforts of Sir Charles Mackerras, who conducted the operas everywhere. Now his operas are mainstream. And no one even knew the man wrote operas. No one knew who he was. There were only a couple things available. Once in a while, something would pop up. Leonard Bernstein recorded the Glagolitic Mass. It probably went out of print in 15 minutes. Rudolf Kempe did the Glagolitic Mass on Decca. You needed to hear something on a major label because, back when the day when I was growing up, there weren't that many independent labels. It was the 3 or 4 majors, and that was it. And if their music wasn't there, then it was really a tricky thing. There were imports and Eastern European things and, stuff, trolling around in the bins. But JANÁČek is one of those composers who struck me like a bolt of lightning when I first heard it. And the way I first heard it was this. I used to hang out at an absolutely wonderful record store in Baltimore when I was in college at Johns Hopkins University, an undergraduate. And this was in 1979. And the record store was called Record Masters. It was in the Rotunda in Baltimore. And they had a really great classical wing. Originally, they were all one thing, but then they opened up a classical annex. Boy, those were the days, weren't they? There was the Tower Classical Annex, or these classical separate things where all of this stuff was available. And they organized their stock by catalog number. They did not do it by composer. They did it by label and catalog number. And a lot of record stores did it that way because it was inventory control. But the beauty of that system was that in order to find something, you'd pick up your Schwann catalog and you'd look and see what was available under the composer and the work. And then you would go to the area where that label was and you would find that catalog number and you'd find that recording. This forced you to A, figure out what was around, and B, learn how everything was organized. What the labels were, what the catalog numbers were, who the artists were. It was a fabulous education while you shopped. And of course, they had very knowledgeable people there. You didn't have to go do it yourself. They could just go and pull it out if you were in a rush. But if you weren't, if you wanted to spend a little time to really get to know what was going on, it was an incomparable educational process. So the Deutsche Grammophon pile was in a browser and, rows of Deutsche Grammophon. And, because I was a classical music freak from like the age of 3, I would just go and look through it and see what was there. Well, one of the things that was there was the Raphael Kubelik Bavarian Radio Symphony recording of the Sinfonietta and Taras Bulba. And you may recall the cover. I could put it up here, but it was this weird thing. It was kind of arresting. And I loved Dvorak. I knew I liked Czech music, sort of, from Smetana and Dvorak and those people. You figure there got to be more of them anyway. So I looked, and there was JANÁČek, and I knew he was Czech just from the name JANÁČek. Get it? Czech, right? And there was this recording of something called Taras Bulba. Now, I knew there was a movie called Taras Bulba with Tony Curtis. I had no clue that Taras Bulba was like a thing in other media. And I pulled this thing out and I said to the guy who worked there, what's this? Who's that? And he said, oh, well, you have his dates on the back of the album and you read the little liner notes, which were incredibly helpful on the back of the album. And they said, well, he's this quirky Czech guy, and you kind of got to listen to it. But try it. You'll like it. I listened to people. It's like $6 in those days, $7. So I bought it, and I took it home to my dorm because I was a freshman, and I plonked it on the stereo that I had schlepped from Connecticut, and whoa, baby, was that something. I started with the Sinfonietta. Well, the Sinfonietta, of course, became the source of the song Knife Edge by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So if you knew your Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you knew the Sinfonietta up to a point anyway. But the opening of the Sinfonietta, in case you don't know, is written for something like 14 trumpets and 2 tenor tubas and timpani. And there is nothing like it in the universe of music. And Janacek's own style is so twitchy. It's quick, it's fast music. Even when it's in a slow tempo, it's fast music because it's based on little themelets, tunelets and things, and repetition and ostinato, that is rhythms that repeat underneath the music and propel it along. It always seems to be doing something. So it's going do 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 ba da 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 with all these trumpets, and they're all going crazy, and then all of a sudden it stops. Because Janacek didn't write codas, it just stops. Da 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 da. And I'm like, whoa, wait, stop. It stopped. And then all of a sudden the next movement starts. The clarinet's doing that thing. And this unbelievably weird sound. Later I got the score. I realized they're muted trombones in their lowest registers. So it's going, the trumpets are going, plank with it. It's like, what the hell is that? I mean, they're just sounds that you never hear before. But then over them, you get these tune things. And the tune things are almost folk-like. It's like, whoa. It's obviously Czech. It's obviously kind of folk-like, but it's in a context that's completely contemporary, that you've never heard anyone write anything like that. And I just was sitting there like, for 22 minutes and 18 seconds, or however long it took. It blew my mind away. And then I put on Taras Bulba. And Taras Bulba is in 3 movements, and it's all about the death of Andre, the death of Ostap, the death of Taras. I mean, it's like lovely movement titles, right? But you listen to it, and it's so beautiful. Oh, and it seems to start in the middle. You know, the opening is da 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 da, just in the middle of something. And then you hear these bells and this organ. Somewhere there's an organ. And there's this obvious battle music. Bum ba dum ba ba da 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 da, with the cymbals going pachum pachum pachum. The sword clashes. You can tell exactly what it is. But then you get to the second movement, and you hear this, again, amazing writing for normal instruments, for the harp in this case. The opening. The harp arpeggios. I mean, the harp is the solo instrument there. And the violin's just going, yum, 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 yum. The harp there. Who imagined these sounds? I mean, that's what something has to seize you when you hear a new composer. Either it's a tune or something that you've never heard before, that no one else came up with. And it always amazes me, frankly, that you would think with all the music that's out there, that originality would be kind of hard to come by. But the great composers, of course, always managed to do it. And no one did it more than Janacek. It seems like every note that he wrote, every note that he wrote was something that nobody else could have conceived of. At least not in the same way. So that album just, and from then on I was hooked. And I mean, I liked that album so much, in those days with vinyl and static electricity, I bought like 4 of them because I would just wear through them and I would need new fresh ones regularly. It was just, I played it for my friends. It was amazing. Then I realized, trying to get into him a little more, that he was writing operas. And I was very lucky because the late 70s was the time when the Macaris Janacek opera cycle was coming out. If you looked really hard, you could find the Superfon recordings, and some of the other stuff in import bins. But they were, it was communist Superfon. They were crappy pressings, and they smelled like manure and from the ink or whatever they used. And they were clunky and kind of, you felt like you wanted to take a shower after you played one because you didn't know what had gotten on your hands or how toxic it may be. So those Decca recordings of the Janacek operas were coming. And the first one I got was the Macropolis case because it was brand new with Elizabeth Soderstrom. And I looked at the plot, a plot about a 337-year-old opera singer who's trying to find the elixir of life formula that she gave to one of her boyfriends 200 years previously. And now there's a lawsuit that she's getting involved in the middle. And then finally she realizes she doesn't want to live anymore anyway because life is empty and meaningless. And then when you're going to live forever. And so she lets herself die. And I mean, it's like, whoa, what the hell is that? And it was all over in an hour and 50 minutes. And it has an overture. Ooh, what an overture. It's like, ooh, baby. What an overture, my God. I mean, and I hadn't heard a lot of opera in Czech. How much of that was there at the time. So, of course, I went for all the rest of his stuff, too. And it was unbelievable. From there, I never looked back. I was lucky. To be around at the time that Janacek was becoming a thing. He was becoming known. And oh my God, what a wonderful time it was. So that is my story of how I discovered Janacek, and I would love to hear yours. I do want to make one final comment, though, because somebody put in the usual, well, it's not pronounced Janacek, it's pronounced Janacek. There is nothing more asshole-ish than correcting people's pronunciation, especially when you don't do it correctly, as in this case they did not. Because I've been to Prague several times, like 50 times, and they pronounce Janacek, Janacek. So there you go. There are different Czech dialects. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. There's a whole discussion about which way it's going to go. No one gives a damn. As long as we know who we're talking about, however you want to say it is okay. And I've said it before, if anybody does that, they're getting banned from this channel. We're here to talk about music. We're not here to be persnickety and sanctimonious and asshole-ish. So let us agree, friends, that we are going to put that aside when we talk about all these composers. No one who is in classical music and who has to deal with thousands of names in dozens, if not hundreds of languages, is going to get it right all the time. And so we don't care. The point is to know what we're talking about and enjoy it. And that's what I intend to do. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.